In the golden age of reality television, a handful of shows carved out unique spaces by blending entertainment with craftsmanship. Among these, American Restoration stood tall, not merely as another spin-off from Pawn Stars, but as a heart and hammer story built on sweat, skill, and soul. At the center of it all stood a man whose charisma and talent turned forgotten relics into gleaming masterpieces, Rick Dale. For millions of viewers around the world, Rick was more than just a TV personality. He was a symbol of perseverance, ingenuity, and old-school American grit. With his weathered hands and fiery passion, he breathed life into everything from rusted Coca-Cola machines to vintage Harley-Davidsons. His Las Vegas-based shop, Rick's Restorations, wasn't just a business, it was a family endeavor, a place where every chipped edge and scraped paint told a story. And Rick was the master storyteller. But behind the familiar smile and camera-ready confidence, Rick Dale's life held shadows the public never saw, until it all unraveled. In 2014, at the height of the show's popularity, History Channel made a shocking decision. Rick Dale and his entire crew were fired without explanation. Fans were blindsided. The man who had become the face of antique restoration vanished from television, and rumors began to swirl. What had happened behind the scenes? Was it a creative dispute, personal struggle, or something more painful? What followed was not just the end of a hit show, it was the beginning of a deeply personal tragedy that would test Rick's health, family, and spirit. This video uncovers the true story behind Rick Dale's heartbreaking fall from fame, his struggles off-screen, the mystery behind his dismissal, and how he's trying to rebuild his life piece by piece, just like the machines he once restored with pride. Before the bright lights of television, before the accolades, fame, and the heartbreak, Rick Dale was just another young boy growing up in the dusty heat of Las Vegas, Nevada. Born on December 13, 1970, Rick was raised in a working-class American family that valued hard work, honesty, and craftsmanship. Long before he became a restoration icon, he was a child shaped by two powerful influences: his father and his relentless curiosity for fixing things. Rick's father was a construction worker and blue-collar man through and through. He wasn't a celebrity or a public figure, but to Rick, he was everything. It was his father who introduced him to the world of metal, machines, and raw craftsmanship. Their garage was more than just a workspace, it was a place where lessons were taught without words. Rick has often recalled in interviews that as a young boy, he would watch his father meticulously repair tools, vehicles, or household items that others might simply throw away. He didn't believe in buying new if he could fix the old, Rick once said. That philosophy would become the foundation of Rick's entire identity. By the age of 9, Rick was already helping his father with basic repair work. By 12, he was welding scrap metal into rudimentary shapes. By his mid-teens, he could fully disassemble and reassemble a broken bicycle or vending machine. It wasn't schooling that taught him these skills, it was pure hands-on experience. Though Rick was clearly gifted with his hands, school didn't come as easily. He struggled academically, not because he lacked intelligence, but because his talents didn't fit the traditional classroom mold. Often labeled a dreamer or unfocused by teachers, Rick found solace in the workshop rather than textbooks. These early challenges only fueled his ambition. He didn't need validation from a report card, he needed a place to create, to tinker, to restore. That place became his own garage. As a teenager in the late 1980s, Rick began salvaging broken items from junkyards, yard sales, and dumpsters around the Las Vegas Valley. He was particularly obsessed with vintage Americana, old Pepsi machines, metal signs, rusty bicycles, antique clocks, and discarded jukeboxes. What others saw as trash, Rick saw as treasure. But this wasn't just a hobby, it was slowly turning into a calling. In his early 20s, Rick worked a series of odd jobs, including construction and mechanics, but he always came back to his passion, restoring vintage machines. By the early 1990s, he had built a small but loyal client base. Word began to spread that there was a guy in Vegas who could bring anything old back to life. If it was metal, painted, and vintage, Rick could fix it. With little money and even fewer resources, Rick founded Rick's Restorations, a one-man operation in a modest garage. His early work included Coca-Cola coolers, gumball machines, and neon signs, objects with sentimental value that had faded into disrepair. But what set Rick apart wasn't just his technical skill, it was his respect for history. Unlike many modern restorers who simply replaced old parts, Rick believed in preserving the soul of an object. Every chip, every dent, it tells a story, he'd often say. My job is to let that story shine again. Slowly, Rick's workshop expanded. He brought in his younger brother Ron Dale to help, and together, they began to shape what would become one of the most famous restoration teams in the country. Rick's early clients were mostly small business owners or private collectors. But he quickly gained a reputation for honesty, a rare trait in a business where overcharging and cutting corners were all too common. He refused to rush jobs just to meet deadlines and often worked far beyond quoted hours without charging extra. His obsession with perfection came at a cost: late nights, missed holidays, and financial strain. But it also built a reputation that would one day catch the attention of the History Channel. Before the cameras rolled and the world knew his name, Rick Dale was a man already living his dream. He just didn't know how far it would take him, or how much it would later cost. By the time Rick Dale had developed a steady stream of clients and a respected name in the restoration world, fate was already working quietly in the background. Las Vegas was no stranger to television producers, and one unexpected opportunity would transform Rick from a skilled local craftsman into a global celebrity. In 2009, a producer from Pawn Stars, History Channel's newly launched hit show, came across Rick's work while researching experts to help assess and restore antique items brought into the gold and silver pawn shop. The producer needed someone who wasn't just good with tools, but who had a captivating personality, old-school values, and a sense of showmanship. Rick Dale was a perfect fit. He made his first appearance on Pawn Stars in Season 1, brought in to restore a battered vintage gas pump. The results were breathtaking. Rick took the rusted hulk of machinery and returned it to gleaming, museum-quality condition. Viewers were stunned. The crew loved him. He was instantly memorable. As Pawn Stars surged in popularity, Rick became a recurring guest. Each time he appeared, the ratings jumped. He wasn't just fixing things, he was connecting people to history, one object at a time. That's when the History Channel saw potential beyond a few cameos. What if Rick had his own show? In October 2010, American Restoration premiered on History Channel, with Rick Dale as the star. The show followed the daily operations of Rick's Restorations, now a full-blown family-run business. What made American Restoration unique wasn't just the transformations, it was the dynamic within the shop. There were constant deadlines, heated arguments, hilarious pranks, and high-stakes repairs. But underneath the drama was something deeper, a genuine love for craftsmanship and family. Each episode featured Rick and his crew taking on challenging projects: a World War II Coke machine, a 1930s barber's chair, a 1950s drive-in speaker system, or even a rusted-out vintage motorcycle. The show educated viewers on the history of each item, then showcased the painstaking process of bringing it back to life. Viewers weren't just entertained, they were inspired. As the show's popularity exploded, Rick Dale became a household name. American Restoration reached millions of viewers across the US and was syndicated in over 30 countries. Fans visited Las Vegas not just for the casinos, but to see Rick's restorations in person. Tourists lined up for a glimpse of the man they saw on television. But with fame came immense pressure. Rick's obsession with quality, once his greatest strength, became a burden. Every project had to be perfect. Every episode had to top the last. The demands of filming often clashed with the realities of running a real business. Kelly, acting as both wife and manager, found herself constantly balancing customer demands, TV production needs, and her husband's growing stress. Tyler struggled to live up to his father's expectations. Ron and Brettley often found themselves caught in the middle of workplace tension. Despite this, the team delivered. Seasons 2 through 5 were massive successes. Ratings remained strong. Merchandise sales, t-shirts, mugs, and memorabilia soared. Rick even released an instructional book and made public appearances around the country. At this point, Rick Dale seemed unstoppable. What made Rick Dale stand out wasn't just the show, it was who he was. In a television landscape filled with scripted drama and over-the-top personalities, Rick felt genuine. He wasn't an actor. He was a man who had struggled, built something from scratch, and treated old objects like sacred artifacts. He shared life lessons during each episode's conclusion in a segment called Rick's Tips, where he gave honest advice about craftsmanship, life, and running a business. For many fans, this was the highlight of the show, a quiet, thoughtful moment that captured Rick's core values. Viewers wrote to him, visited him, and told him their own stories. Veterans would bring in war relics, hoping Rick could restore a piece of their past. Widows would request the restoration of jukeboxes that once belonged to their husbands. Every item had an emotional weight, and Rick never took that lightly. He was, in every sense, a craftsman with a soul. But while fans only saw the triumphs, Rick and his team were fighting invisible battles behind the scenes. Battles with production companies, with the network, with creative differences, and with the emotional toll of trying to keep everything together. Then came 2014, and everything changed. In the summer of 2014, fans of American Restoration tuned in eagerly, expecting another season filled with brilliant restorations and behind-the-scenes family dynamics. But without warning, without an official statement, farewell episode, or even an on-air goodbye, Rick Dale and his entire team vanished from the show. The next season of American Restoration returned, but it was unrecognizable. Gone were the familiar faces of Rick, Kelly, Tyler, Ron, Bretley, and the old Las Vegas shop. In their place, a new format, multiple rotating restoration teams across America, and a sterile, impersonal tone. It was clear, American Restoration as fans knew it was dead. What shocked fans most wasn't just that Rick was gone, it was that nobody explained why. History Channel offered no formal press release. Rick himself remained silent for several months. The internet erupted with speculation. Fan forums and Facebook pages filled with confusion and anger. People demanded answers. Rick had become a symbol of the show, and to remove him without a goodbye felt like betrayal. Eventually, Rick confirmed in a brief social media comment what many had feared. "Yes, we were let go. No, we weren't given a reason. It wasn't our choice." This short, heart-wrenching statement made clear that the departure was not voluntary, and it set off a wave of theories, rumors, and even some harsh accusations. The rumors begin: creative conflicts and network politics. In the absence of official answers, rumors filled the vacuum. One theory suggested a creative disagreement between Rick and the production team. As the show evolved, History Channel wanted more manufactured drama and faster-paced episodes. Rick, known for his perfectionism and authenticity, allegedly resisted turning his shop into a reality TV circus. Others believed Rick had grown too expensive. By season 6, American Restoration was a top-rated show, and Rick had reportedly renegotiated a higher salary. To a profit-focused network, cutting costs, even if it meant firing the face of the show, may have been a simple business decision. Some online sources claimed Rick's attention to detail slowed down production. Episodes ran behind schedule, editing became difficult, and the crew struggled to create enough action in the workshop to fit the network's expectations. In short, Rick's commitment to real craftsmanship clashed with the show's desire for mass appeal. But there were darker rumors too. A small number of clients, some featured on the show, began voicing dissatisfaction. One such incident involved Angel Delgadillo, a well-known Route 66 preservationist who had entrusted Rick's team with restoring a vintage Wurlitzer jukebox. According to Delgadillo, the restoration was rushed and returned in poor condition. He expressed disappointment, saying he felt the job lacked the care and precision Rick once promised. Whether this was an isolated incident or a symptom of deeper issues remains unclear, but it added to the growing narrative that something was going wrong at Rick's restorations behind the scenes. Additionally, critics claimed that Rick's shop had become overwhelmed with orders, stretched thin by the demands of television fame, and that quality control had slipped as a result. Still, these accusations were relatively rare compared to the overwhelming support Rick received from fans. Running a family business is hard. Running it under the scrutiny of millions of viewers and a major TV network is harder. Those close to Rick described the increasing tensions inside the shop during the show's final season. Tyler, still maturing into adulthood, reportedly clashed with his father over responsibility and respect. Rick, ever the perfectionist, pushed his team hard, sometimes too hard. Ron and Bretley, though deeply loyal, often felt sidelined or undervalued during filming. There were also rumors, never publicly confirmed, of financial strain. Despite TV success, the business faced mounting costs, increased staff, and the pressure to constantly deliver jaw-dropping results. Some speculated that Rick and Kelly had mortgaged property or taken out loans to expand the shop in anticipation of future seasons that never came. If the firing came suddenly, it likely hit not just emotionally, but financially. After the show's cancellation, Rick and Kelly went quiet. Very few interviews followed. Fans noticed that Rick began aging rapidly. He looked thinner, worn down. The man who once stood proudly in front of gleaming chrome now looked like someone who had been through a war. Occasionally, Rick would post on social media, thanking fans for their continued support or sharing small updates about custom work. But there was a sadness in his words, a hesitation that hadn't existed before. He began receiving thousands of letters and messages from loyal viewers. Some messages brought Rick to tears. Others frustrated him, as he had no answers to offer. Why was he gone? Why had it all ended? In one particularly emotional comment, Rick wrote, "They took the show, but they can't take what we built." For Rick Dale, American Restoration wasn't just a television show. It was the embodiment of everything he stood for: respect for the past, pride in honest labor, and the belief that broken things could be made beautiful again. When History Channel canceled him without warning or recognition, it didn't just end a show, it shattered a dream. Rick had spent his life giving forgotten objects a second chance. But now, it was his turn to face the same question. Could Rick Dale be restored? The departure from American Restoration was more than just a career-ending moment for Rick Dale, it was the beginning of a private and deeply painful struggle. Rick, who had built a television legacy on his commitment to restoring the past, now found himself trying to restore his own life. One of the hardest aspects of Rick's fall from fame was how quickly he was forgotten in the public eye. For 6 seasons, millions had watched him, admired him, and trusted him. But after his firing, the network's new version of American Restoration continued without him. There was no tribute, no farewell, no mention of the man who had built the franchise from the ground up. Suddenly, Rick went from being a celebrity craftsman to just another business owner in Las Vegas. This emotional whiplash hit Rick hard. Interviews were no longer requested. Phone calls slowed. Merchandise tied to the original show disappeared from stores and online shops. For someone who had spent years pouring his heart into his work, who became a public figure through sheer skill and grit, it was a devastating silence. Behind the scenes, Rick's health and morale began to decline. Though Rick has never publicly detailed the full extent of his health struggles, longtime fans began to notice changes. In fan meetups, candid photos, and even social media videos, Rick looked visibly thinner, older, and tired. His eyes, once bright with focus and fire, seemed clouded with worry. In one 2016 video posted on Facebook, Rick appeared shaky and disoriented. Though only meant to be a casual update, fans flooded the comments section expressing concern. "Rick, are you okay? You don't look like yourself. Please take care of your health, we miss you." Whispers of potential depression or even substance use began surfacing on Reddit and fan forums. Some claimed the stress of losing his identity as a TV personality led Rick down a dark emotional path. Others speculated that behind the stress, he was fighting a private health crisis. What is known, based on interviews and family updates, is that Rick struggled deeply with anxiety and self-doubt during this time. Losing the show wasn't just a career blow, it struck at the very core of who he was. For decades, Rick had believed in his hands, his shop, and his story. Without the spotlight, he began to wonder if it had all meant anything. While American Restoration was airing, business had been booming. Tourists flooded Rick's restorations. Clients lined up with big-money projects. But when the show ended, so did much of the revenue. According to close sources, Rick and Kelly had made several major business investments expecting the show to continue for years. These included warehouse expansions, increased staff salaries, equipment upgrades, and even merchandise production. Without the visibility of television, orders dried up, foot traffic slowed, and bills kept coming. Rumors swirled that Rick's Restorations was on the verge of closing in 2016. Although the shop managed to stay open, the operation scaled back dramatically. Staff were laid off, and the property shrank to only a few core working spaces. For someone who had once been featured in magazines, news stories, and museum showcases, this financial retreat felt like public humiliation. Through it all, Rick's greatest anchor remained his wife, Kelly Dale. Kelly had been not only Rick's business partner, but his emotional rock. She handled the business side of things during the show, coordinated scheduling, and even managed merchandise sales. Now, she took on an even greater role, helping Rick find hope again. But the emotional toll didn't stop with Rick. Tyler Dale, Rick's son, had spent his late teens growing up in front of cameras. After the show ended, Tyler struggled to find his next path. He had been set up to inherit the family legacy. Now, that future was gone. Tyler briefly explored his own restoration work and tried launching small business ventures, but they never gained traction like the show. Ron Dale, Rick's brother, who had worked by his side for years, went quiet publicly. Some fans speculated that the stress of losing the shop strained their relationship. Others said Ron simply chose to retire from public life. By 2017, Rick began taking small steps toward rebuilding. He and Kelly launched a new brand under the name My Best Font Forward, which focused on custom laser engraving, vintage signage, and artwork for collectors. Though far from the big-scale restorations of the past, this new venture allowed Rick to stay creative and keep his craftsmanship alive. They started selling online again, custom license plates, personalized wall art, engraved metalwork. While it didn't bring in the same income or media buzz, it kept Rick's name out there and reminded loyal fans that he was still standing. Rick also returned to small live events, antique expos, and restoration festivals. His booth would draw long lines, filled with people carrying old photos, posters, and items for him to sign. They weren't just customers, they were admirers who had never stopped believing in him. Over time, Rick's demeanor softened. He seemed more open, more reflective. He shared lessons about resilience, the dangers of fame, and the importance of staying true to one's passion. "I lost a lot," Rick told one fan, "but I didn't lose who I am." And I still love restoring, just like I always have. Following the painful exit from American Restoration and the emotional aftermath, Rick Dale was faced with a monumental question. Who am I now, without the cameras? For years, Rick's identity had been intertwined with his business, his television persona, and the millions of viewers who watched him restore history. But once the cameras stopped rolling and the shop's sign began to fade, Rick knew he had to build something new. Not just a business, but a new chapter of his life. Rick began by returning to what he loved, working with his hands. He might not have had a full crew or television producers behind him anymore, but he still had his tools, his eye for design, and most importantly, his passion for restoration. In 2018, Rick quietly launched a new venture alongside his wife Kelly called My Best Font Forward. It wasn't a large-scale restoration shop like before, but a boutique operation that offered custom laser engraving, metal signage, and vintage-inspired decor. From garage signs to personalized military plaques, Rick and Kelly tapped into a new niche: sentimental, small-batch artistry. Their products were sold via Etsy and social media, and despite the modest scale, the business gained traction among loyal fans and new customers who admired Rick's craftsmanship. For Rick, this wasn't just about income, it was about reclaiming his creative soul. "This is who I am," Rick said in a 2020 Facebook video. "I make things with love. I give people a piece of history they can hold." While Rick focused on the artistic side of the new venture, Kelly Dale proved once again that she was far more than just Rick's wife. She became the operational heartbeat of My Best Font Forward. Having managed the shop during American Restoration, she knew how to navigate finances, marketing, and the evolving demands of an online business world. In a surprising and empowering move, Kelly also entered the real estate industry and quickly gained respect as a high-performing real estate agent in Las Vegas. By 2021, she was managing a successful real estate career while simultaneously helping run the family's artistic ventures. Kelly often shared on social media the emotional toll of supporting Rick through his depression and self-doubt post-firing. Yet she remained a pillar of strength, always encouraging, always strategizing. "We've been through hell," she once wrote. "But we're still here. And we're still building, together." Rick's son, Tyler Dale, who had once been seen as the heir to the restoration empire, found himself adrift after the show ended. Having grown up under the spotlight, Tyler experienced a sense of identity loss once the cameras were gone. For a time, he disappeared from public view. But by 2020, Tyler re-emerged online, sharing his own small-scale fabrication work. His Instagram and Facebook pages feature his metal art, welding projects, and bike builds, proving that the apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. Still, Tyler's journey has not been without challenge. Without the brand recognition and customer base Rick once had, Tyler has struggled to find a stable platform. But to those who follow him, his work speaks volumes, raw, edgy, and full of character. Much like his father in his younger days. Bretley, on the other hand, chose a more private life. While he occasionally appears in photos with Kelly and Rick at community events, he has not publicly pursued a restoration-related career. Insiders say he has turned his attention to media production and automotive shows, sometimes offering behind-the-scenes help at events that celebrate vintage cars and culture. Even after nearly a decade off-air, Rick Dale's fanbase has not disappeared. He continues to attend automotive expos, vintage restoration fairs, and classic car rallies around the US. Though the lines are no longer hundreds of people deep, the fans who approach him do so with deep admiration. Some bring items Rick restored on the show. Others bring photos of their children watching American Restoration together. Many just want to say, "Thank you." Rick often speaks candidly at these events, talking not just about restoration but about resilience, aging, fame, and identity. He has said more than once that he has no bitterness about what happened with the show. "The TV stuff, it was great. But it's not who I am. I was a craftsman before, and I'll be one till the day I die." Though many have moved on, internet rumors continue to swirl about Rick's past. Some claim he had legal trouble. Others say he battled addiction or went bankrupt. The truth? There's no confirmed legal case, no bankruptcy filings, and no evidence of addiction. Like many public figures who fall out of the spotlight, Rick simply became a magnet for speculation. Rick has never addressed these rumors directly, but those close to him insist they're untrue or grossly exaggerated. Instead, Rick prefers to let his work speak for itself, through the art he sells, the clients he serves, and the memories he leaves behind at every event he attends. Today, Rick Dale is no longer a celebrity in the traditional sense. He's not making primetime appearances. He doesn't walk red carpets. But in many ways, he has found something more valuable: peace, purpose, and perspective. His business is modest, his family is close, and his work continues, just on his terms.
He still welds. He still restores.
He still teaches younger fans who write him for advice. And perhaps most importantly, he still believes in the power of second chances. Rick Dale's story is not just about fame, restoration, or television. It's about resilience. About losing everything you've built, and still finding a way to keep going. He reminded us all that even when life knocks you down, you can always rebuild, piece by piece. If this story moved you, if you learned something new about Rick Dale's journey, and if you believe stories like his deserve to be heard,
please hit the like button.
It helps more people discover the story of a man who never gave up on his craft or his identity. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories of celebrities, creators and craftsmen. Those who inspired us, those who vanished, and those who fought their way back.